You're listening to episode 1009 of the Father Bills Podcast. Welcome back. This week's episode is entitled, A Holy Family is Not a Perfect Family, given on the Feast of the Holy Family 2025. How was your Christmas? It's still going on. Was it with your family?
Yes.
How'd that go? Was it joyful and relaxed? Or was it a little intense? Maybe old tensions arose, or short tempers occurred, or maybe even someone left early because they couldn't have any more. Was that you that left early? Today, the church places before us the Holy Family. And before we turn them into a Hallmark card of perfection and polish, let's be honest about their story. Mary's pregnancy was unusual, to say the least, and it raised questions. Now imagine, a virginal conception, it's not an easy story to explain to your neighbors. Or they lived under a constant threat of violence. We just heard about this. So much so that the ruler was willing to then murder the children in their city just to eliminate the son. They fled their homeland and became refugees. Border walls and immigration policies were the least of their worries. They just needed to get out of town. And even their son, extraordinary though he was, once stayed behind in Jerusalem, leaving his parents frantic with worry. That's way worse than getting stuck, or I should say lost in Walmart. From the beginning to the end, there were plenty about which to worry Joseph and Mary. In my experience, the most inspiring families are not the ones who have had unfettered lives, smooth and no issues, but rather those who have had to hold on to their faith when life became overwhelming. One such family from my previous parish is the Snodgrass family, who generously agreed that I could share their journey with you. Everybody in the parish knew it already because they shared it all with them. Early in the marriage, Gabe and Reneé Snodgrass discerned through prayer and God's grace to welcome a large family, something uncommon by today's standards. When I first arrived at the parish, Reneé often came to daily mass with 3 and then 4 children in tow. As young children do, they could be noisy during mass and after mass. That drew criticism from one of our, I'll just say, pesky parishioners at the time, who believed that silence should reign even after mass had ended. More than once, I and many others defended Reneé, reminding everyone that her children are not being disobedient, but simply being children, and that she and her family are welcome here. Eventually, the Snodgrasses were blessed with their 5th child, Julianne. One summer evening, I received a frantic call from Gabe. I could barely know what he was saying. He was crying. He was desperate. Apparently, during their family gathering, Julianne was, at this time, a toddler, tragically died in a freak accident. They called me from San Diego so I could pray and comfort them. I thought to myself, who am I? Besides this fact, this is an incredible tragedy, who am I that they would call me? Well, this was just me getting to know the Snodgrasses. They wanted their pastor, not just any priest. They wanted to be prayed with me. When they returned home, we prepared for Julianne's funeral. What carried them through was clear. That is, their faith in God and the support of their family and the parish family. A year later, Reneé became pregnant with their son, the next son, Patrick. It was soon diagnosed that Patrick had severe birth defects and was unlikely to survive to birth. Yet a miracle happened in that he was born. And he was then baptized immediately at the hospital by Gabe. And this little one lived for 21 days. Each day was a huge gift to the family, celebrating and knowing that Patrick was on borrowed time. Once again, we gathered, this time for another child's funeral. After years of discernment, they conceived again that this child, Jordan, was lost through miscarriage. The family, thank God, grieved, and we gathered once more for simple funeral rites. How much can a family take? To lose one child is devastating. To lose 3 is probably unbearable. Yet through it all, Gabe and Reneé were steadfast in their faith and surrounded by family, friends, and parishioners who walked with them in faith. 6 months later, Reneé was diagnosed herself with stage 4 cancer. She fought courageously. She traveled to Lourdes and was strengthened by the peace that was received there, and it allowed her to face her mortality. Her body weakened, but her faith never did. Eventually, she died surrounded by her family, trusting completely in Christ, who had walked through with all of them through every trial. I've stayed in contact with the Snodgrasses ever since. Just this last week, I called Gabe to wish him and his 4 children a Merry Christmas. Their 2 oldest now are teenagers who can drive. That's enough to scare any parent. When I asked how they were doing, he said they were very busy, but strong in faith. I spoke briefly with one of the younger sons, Andrew, and I heard a voice of a child wise beyond his years. Gabe was clear. Their strength comes only from the grace of God. And I wholeheartedly agree. The Snodgrass family is a holy family. Not a perfect family. Not a family untouched by tragedy and loss. But a family that knows suffering and death. And more importantly, knows Jesus. A family who has walked through darkness while being guided by the light of the world. They've never pretended life was not painful. Gabe and Reneé did not shield their children from suffering. Instead, they taught them that Jesus walks with them through both joy, pain, and suffering. And that Jesus will catch us when we fall. So take comfort. You might look at each other and say to another family or to yourself, gosh, that family looks perfect. They're always smiling and there's no issues. But what you may not know is on their way to church today, they had a heated argument in the car and put on smiles just as they walked into church. You see, my friends, there is no such thing as a perfect family. But holy families do exist. And it's not because there are no issues, but because they remain faithful to God through their imperfections and sufferings. They also have a joy that goes far beyond their circumstances. That's always a tell. Why are you so happy? Why do you have this joy? It makes no sense outside of Christ. Gabe and his children are much like a holy family, while smaller now. The joy I've witnessed since I first got to know them still exists. And even on that phone call just the other day, it was quite noisy in the background, and we laughed and talked. My friends, saints are made in a crucible of suffering, which strengthens their faith as they walk with God. Yes, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph were a holy family, but yours can be too. It's about holiness. Holiness is a function of faithfulness. not freedom from frustration, fragility, or failure, nor does it function of death. Christ has conquered death. And with Jesus at their side, they have every reason to hope. A big thank you needs to go out to Gabe Snodgrass for his permission to share their family story. Of course, as a couple, both him and Reneé were very public about all of these things. And actually, they really wanted the love of God and the grace of God and his miraculous love for us to shine forth in all of these journeys, despite all of and through all of these tragedies. My friends, if you have any comments or questions, I just want to encourage you to go to my website, fatherbill.org. In the meantime, may God bless you, and I'll see you in the next year. Bye-bye.